Dave Numbers here, and welcome back to another episode of the Political Freedom Fighters Podcast. And in this episode, I have with you all today another Libertarian running for office. This time, this Libertarian is running for U.S. House District 2. And with that being said, I want to introduce to all of you Matthew Lazsacx. How are you, sir?
Hey, awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Anyways, the first question I gotta ask you is, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so I have been. So first of all, I came to libertarianism through lived experience, not necessarily through academia. I'm just I had kids very young, 20 years old. I kind of had to figure out how to work my way, up just in life in general. I went to college nights and weekends, had two boys. And, I lived through that experience of trying to take care of young children on limited means. I know what it's like to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I think those things are important. I think those are life experiences that help shape me. And those things kind of guided me towards libertarianism. I have been a libertarian most of my adult life. Really started to understand what the party was and really started to understand some classical liberal principles in my early 20s. And then just those things, cemented themselves as, kind of my ideology throughout the rest of my adulthood. Things that happened to me in life reinforce classical liberal principles. And I really consider myself first and foremost a classical liberal. It's kind of what my background is. It's all of I think the great classical liberal thinkers kind of reimagined it's a made up word, reimagined as a Mount Rushmore. They're my Mount Rushmore, but the living life made me a libertarian. Having life experiences. And a few years ago, this is my third campaign. My wife and I were talking just about how bad the political environment's become in this country. Things we all know are very polarized. And everything is just really boiled down to talking points and, kind of bland statements. And I didn't hear a lot of substance and clarity when people talk about politics. It seems to be this team or that team, a lot of demagoguery. And I just wanted my wife and I said, hey, we just have to participate. We have to be involved. And I had already been involved with the Libertarian Party off and on previously throughout my adult life, but just decided, I'm in a different place in life. My children are grown. And out of the house, and I've have some lived experiences that I thought might be applicable to politics and running as a candidate. And really, mostly for me, running in campaigns is about advancing ideas. So that's kind of who I am and how I got here, I guess.
That's awesome, man. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about your history.
How far back do you want to go? I was born. No, seriously, I was born in Philadelphia. My father was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. Both of my brothers were in the military. They both retired from the military. So I have a strong kind of conservative upbringing. I grew up Catholic, still Catholic to this day, and just have a very strong conservative background. But like I said, through my adult life, I just found that both conservatives and liberals tend to hold on to, a little bit of mythology, and they both have emotional arguments and things they hold on to emotionally that aren't really borne out by how life really works and by how people really act and by the way things really are. And that's another big part of how I got to libertarianism. But yeah, conservative upbringing, young father, went to college, nights and weekends, just like everybody else went from trying to make ends meet to getting to a little bit better place in life. At this point, I've made it to the VP level at work. I've been in the business world for the past 20 years. And in the business world, when we try to change things, or when you're asked to tackle change, we like to take things at a crawl, walk, run approach. And one of the things that I've noticed just in working with people and in building teams, or in going into a new environment and trying to shape things or try to figure out what's going on, you start digging in and you find out that people are almost never the problem. It really has been a lived experience in my life that people are mostly good. And most people just want to do well, work hard, take care of their families, show up every day, and be good members of society, and to be good workers. And I really have found throughout the years that you don't really have to change people. What you have to do is change systems. And that's really kind of the theme of my candidacy this go around, is that, people are not broken, systems are broken. And that has borne itself out in my work life. And I think that can be applied to politics as well. And also in business, when we want to take on big tasks, you break the elephant up into small bites. You eat the elephant one bite at a time, and you employ a crawl, walk, run approach. And that's, to me, it seems like, why couldn't we do that with politics and with libertarianism? Find out what's broken, get to the root of the problem, see where the low-hanging fruit is, implement some quick changes, things that are easy for people to agree on, and then go from there, and then tackle the higher level challenges. That's kind of the theme of my candidacy this year, is people are not broken, systems are. Let's focus on fixing systems, not on fixing broken people. That takes the personal nature out of politics and makes it about focusing on systems, so that we can work together to figure out how to fix institutions versus trying to fix people. And I think we'll go a lot further and have a lot more success that way.
Alrighty, that's fair enough. So, why are you running as a Libertarian for U.S. House District 2?
Well, I think that, first and foremost, I'm a classical liberal and a libertarian. And I see a political environment that has become increasingly in favor of consolidating power, at least a federal political system that's in favor of consolidating power within the presidency, within the executive, and consolidating power within the judiciary. Those two branches are operating well outside of their constitutional scope, as written in the Constitution, as intended by the founders. I think that over the past 100 years, that Congress has largely taken a step back, become passengers in the political process. They don't really engage in meaningful discussions anymore, or try to write meaningful legislation, or try to rein in the administrative state that they have by and large created. Instead, what I think you have in the United States right now is an environment where voters tell Congress, hey, we don't really like you, but we do like our president and we do like our Supreme Court. So Congress, get out of the way. We're not going to really pay much attention to you or vote for you like we do vote for the president, because those Supreme Court nominations are so important and those executive orders are so important. And I think that's a broken system. And I think that we can solve a lot of our problems in politics just by Congress, kind of reasserting its Article 1 authorities. Article 1 gives Congress a lot of tools to push back on, the mission creep of the executive. We can push back on, the power to declare war. We can push back on budgeting and spending. We can push back on emergency spending. We can push back on a lot of things that the president does, and we can push back on a lot of things that the judicial branch does. Article 3 of the Constitution actually gives Congress the ability to write the rules for what the Supreme Court does and doesn't do, by and large. And it just doesn't happen. But to me, we have a system where voters are not super involved in picking their congressional leaders. And so I'm asking voters, hey, we have reached the proverbial definition of insanity. We keep voting for Republicans and Democrats over and over again, expecting different results. I would just say, vote for people like me that want to go and reassert our Article 1 powers in Congress, push back on the president, push back on the judiciary, and restore the balance of powers to the federal government. And that is the thesis statement for me for why I'm running in this election.
Alrighty, that is awesome, man. So next up, I'm going to ask you your opinion on the Democrats since they are in charge of this seat. What's your opinion on the Democratic Party?
Well, first and foremost, whether Democrat or Republican, I would say that I think that they are good people by and large, trying to do good things for their constituents. I think the approaches are often wrong. And I think that Democrats largely live in an aspirational world. I think they see problems, but they have aspirational solutions to problems. And I don't think they're very workable solutions in a lot of cases. I think that there's a lot to be said for identifying, problems with this country, with the way politics works, advocating for the poor, advocating for, the freedom of expression, and advocating for the rights of the individual to be with who they want to be with, love who they want to love. Those things are all wonderful. And I share all of those goals as well. But I think that Democrats get wrapped up in ideological and aspirational solutions that just aren't very workable for the American people. And, also they tend to get wrapped up in, the government will solve everything. And there are actually, when you look at it from a practical standpoint, there's very few things that government solves very efficiently. And what we end up getting is layer upon layer upon layer of ever increasing bureaucracy and laws, to the point that nobody in this country right now understands what all of the laws are, and probably don't understand what very many of the laws are. And we all probably very frequently break laws, even at levels that we wouldn't think. I'm even talking about misdemeanors. Like there are so many laws on the books and so much government on top of government on top of government that it's just not a very functional system anymore. And I think about it like I watch all these shows on television with my wife where somebody buys a house and they fix it up. What's the first thing they do? They take it down to the studs and then they make it what they want it to be. And I think we have reached that point in our country where we keep tacking on law and legislation on top of law and legislation. And we have this big clunky kludgy thing that is just unworkable. And I think I'm not saying we can't make government work better or even work better for the people, but I'm saying I think we need to take this thing down. Ultimately, what needs to happen is we need to take it down to the studs and rebuild it. And I think that is, the biggest challenge, I think, for the Democrat Party is that every single thing that they want to do is some form of government telling people what they can and can't do. They seek to do a positive with a negative. They seek to use power to force people to do things and to shove their noses. Like, when you're with your kids or with your dog or with anything, if you shove their nose in it, they don't really learn the lesson. Coercion is such a poor tool for changing people's hearts and minds. And I think that largely Democrats have the right ideas, ultimately the right destination, but the methodology to get there isn't very useful in a lot of cases. And it actually turns people against their ideology, turns people against the goals that they want to accomplish. We have to find a way to make politics and life voluntary. We have to find more ways to make politics and life voluntary, because when you try to force somebody into something, yeah, you can write all laws you want. That doesn't change people's hearts and minds. It might score you some quick wins and some temporary wins, but it doesn't create a durable and lasting change socially or with people. And I think that's what we need to do. That government should be inspiring people to change their minds and change their hearts and create a durable kind of lasting change versus shoving people's noses into their own issues and trying to force people to change their minds through coercion. But that to me is my biggest critique of Democrats and progressives. You just can't solve all problems with force. You can't solve all problems with government, and you really don't create the lasting, durable change you want through coercion. So that's my thoughts on that.
That is awesome, man. Anyways, my next question is, what's your opinion on the Democrat incumbent, Deborah Ross?
I think first and foremost, I will say nothing bad about either Deborah or my Republican challenger. I think they're both fine people. I have not met Deborah Ross in person, don't know her personally, but I think that she is an honest and a kind person who is trying to help her constituents in the way that she knows how to help them, in the way that she knows how to represent them. But again, it's the methodology to get to the goal versus the goal itself that I think we largely if we had any disagreements, that would be the disagreement.
All right, fair enough. Next up, what's your opinion on the Republican Party?
So a good portion of my life, I was a Republican. Some of my earliest political heroes are Republicans. Ronald Reagan, right to the forefront. Barry Goldwater really set the example and kind of set the tone for me for what I thought, responsible government should look like. So more than anything, I would take my early and my young, views of government were formed and shaped largely by those two individuals. Later on in life, Ron Paul, who's more libertarian, but and Rand Paul, who ran as a Republican, they shaped me as well. But my family is largely very conservative, and I share a lot of those conservative values, and I've taken those with me into adulthood. But like I said, I think Republicans get wrapped around the axle on things like immigration, on things like the criminal injustice system, and on some social issues that are just at odds with the Constitution, that are at odds with liberty, and that are at odds with reality. I think you get a lot of Republicans that want to do the same thing as Democrats. They may not be as quick to utilize the government traditionally to force things down people's throats, but Republicans are very, very interested in telling people how they should live their lives. And that's just not the place of government. It's not government's place to tell people who they can marry. It's not government's place to tell people how they should live their lives. And I think we have institutions that largely reflect those ideological and aspirational ideals that don't align with reality. I mean, if you look at the criminal injustice system, it's been for a long time. I don't think it started with Giuliani, but it gained prominence during Giuliani's tenure as mayor of New York City. That, hey, hop the turnstile, go to prison, and we've learned that really does not create the outcomes that we want. We have prisons that are full of low-level criminals. And we're not really enforcing the types of, violent crimes and major crimes that we want to be enforcing. And we have, the state of North Carolina itself, not just the federal government, but the state of North Carolina imprisons a greater percentage of its population than every other first world country out there. All the developed nations, the federal government is the same. I mean, Americans have built a prison system that is incredibly unjust and doesn't really serve the people. We have millions of people that want to come to this country, would love to come here legally. We went from, in the early 1900s, early 1920s, from allowing approximately 98% of all people that wanted to come to this country in, to allowing right around 1% or less than just under 1% of the people that want to come in. Well, no wonder we have a problem at the border. No wonder we have a problem with illegal immigrants. I think everybody wants to have a immigration system that functions properly, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the system we have set up, and that is largely championed by Republicans, does not work because it doesn't let in enough people legally. But you can't have a conversation around legal immigration because the Republican Party has become so polarized and so dogmatic on its views of illegal immigration. And, Republicans have a hard time letting go of the mythology of the criminal illegal immigrant. They're 20, 30 years, people, multiple studies, do illegal immigrants commit more crimes than American citizens? And almost every single one of them, with a couple of rare exceptions that have been discredited, largely the data shows us that immigrants, both legal and illegal, commit less crimes, less violent crimes, less property crimes, and less nonviolent crimes than legal Americans do. So this idea, I think Democrats and Republicans both, would be my point, you hang on to a lot of mythology that just isn't true. And then we get bad policy that comes out of it. And instead of solving problems, the stakes get higher and higher and higher, and everybody digs in and digs a deeper trench. And then we're so caught up in fighting each other and arguing over mythology that we don't focus on solving any of the real problems. So, still largely influenced by the Republican Party and mostly from conservatism, but I've made my way to classical liberalism for some very important reasons. And that's where I sit now. And I think that, Republican or Democrat alike, we if we're going to keep digging our heels in and digging the trenches deeper and fighting each other, it's not going to get anywhere. We got to let some of this mythology go. Another mythology that Republicans and Democrats both hold on to is, over election laws. We've got that issue now in this country. The federal government is trying to involve itself in state elections, and states are to manage elections. That's what the Constitution says. But the federal government right now is led by people that believe that there is widespread voter fraud. And then on the other side of the coin, you have a Democrat Party that believes in widespread voter suppression. Neither of those things are true. And so we create these straw men, these mythological problems and these mythological states of existence that have never existed. And we argue those things versus just trying to, identify what problems really are and solving those actual problems.
Fair enough. I guess the next question I do got to ask you is, this district is looking like to be that the Democrats are going to win this. So I guess my next question for you is, why can't the Republicans win this race?
Well, my district is mostly an urban one. It encompasses most of Wake County. I think all of the city of Raleigh, maybe with a few exceptions. And North Carolina is a state that's in transition. Southern states are gaining a lot of population movement from other states, from northern states and from western states. So you have a big influx of people from, New York, New Jersey, New England, California, and other states where, the North Carolina has a little bit more friendly tax laws, a little bit more friendly laws for corporations, and does a very high degree of corporate welfare to get companies here. So some of the reason why people are moving here is good, and some of the reason is bad. VinFast being one of the bad examples, where the governor gave away people's land and property for a private company from another country that's probably going to fail for the greater good, so to speak. But we do have some good things in our North Carolina state government that makes it an attractive place to do business, as do many other southern states: Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, Texas. These are places with population increases in the United States. And a lot of that population movement is coming from the states that have higher degrees of regulation and higher degrees of taxation. So whereas you see population declining as a whole across the United States, as a matter of fact, our only increases in population come from immigration, legal immigration, that is, and probably illegal immigration too, if you think about it. But populations are declining. Birth rates are below the replacement rate. So we're not really seeing population growth in this country, but we're definitely seeing large amounts of population shifts between states. And usually it's from states with less favorable business and legal and tax environments to states predominantly in the South that have more favorable conditions. That said, you've got a lot of population increases plus an urban area. And those things usually, the confluence of those things usually creates a Democrat or a heavily Democrat district. And that's what I'm in right now. So I think that, Republicans probably aren't going to appeal to a lot of voters in this district. And I think what I can do is bridge the gap between Republicans and Democrats. As a libertarian, I wouldn't call myself a moderate, but I think I'm definitely more amenable to working together and to solving problems and to offering rational solutions versus demagoguery and hyperbole and arguing to mythical states of existence. And that's what my focus would be. But to answer your question directly, I just think that the particular demographics of this district are not favorable to Republicans, and especially not to their current messaging and to their current platform with the current leader of the Republican Party, which is Donald Trump. They're not going to make much. I mean, the deck is stacked against them. You're going to have a lot of people that their ears are closed before they even hear the message. And that's where I think being able to come at this election from a different viewpoint, from one of, focusing on systems and not people will help, kind of bridge that gap and bring more people to some classical liberal ideas where otherwise that might not be very easy for a Republican to do.
Fair enough. Anyways, next up, let's go over your platform. You've already mentioned quite a bit about your platform. So tell me, what is your platform?
Essentially, it's a crawl, walk, run approach to restoring liberty and citizen-led government. I mean, that's it. I think first and foremost, we need to start with Congress by Congress reclaiming its Article 1 powers. I think the primary amongst all of those activities is just getting a handle on the administrative state. The administrative state in this country has grown exponentially because Congress writes a law, it creates a bureaucracy, and then it steps back and doesn't do its oversight job. It just doesn't. Congress does not do an oversight job. It doesn't dig into how agencies are working, the type of laws they're creating. And we get these crazy things like administrative courts that are not Article 3 courts. That we're literally trying people in some cases for crimes, and some, with criminal punishment, and in most cases with heavy fines in a kangaroo court that doesn't have a judge and a jury. That's completely wrong. That should end. And again, most of our agencies have experienced a lot of mission creep, a lot of scope creep, because Congress doesn't do its job. Let's take, FDA, for example. That's an agency that was created to ensure proper labeling of food and drugs. And now it has created a system where new drugs can't be, and new innovation are largely thwarted because it costs $2 billion, I think, is Cato Institute's estimate for how much it costs to create the first pill or the first injection. $2 billion. No wonder we don't have the drug innovation that we had in previous eras. So this is not what the American people wanted from FDA. It's certainly not what they voted for at its inception. But when you create an agency and you don't provide any oversight of it, the mission creep and the scope creep that sets in are going to create these bloated bureaucracies that simply don't perform their core function anymore. So I think it's really important for Congress to retake a serious control over their job to provide administrative oversight to the bureaucracies that they've created. I think, secondly, we need to make a budget. The Constitution gave Congress the power of the purse. Although the Constitution doesn't explicitly say that Congress should create a budget, it's only common sense that in your own household, you create a budget and you stick to it so that you don't go into debt and run your family into bankruptcy. Congress should do the same thing, create a budget and live with it. It's amazing that we even have a budget and a continuing resolution until September right now. So the continued churn in budgeting creates, I've worked for a long time in the government contracting world. You create a lot of uncertainty when you don't pass a budget. And I'm not saying we can't spend money. I'm just saying that we should set spending priorities and create a budget, and we should stick to it. That seems like a very basic function. It's something we do in our own household, and I think we should expect the same from Congress. If they're going to raise revenue and tax us, then they need to create spending priorities and live with them. But we as voters have to tell Congress that we want them to do that, right? So I'm imploring voters. You have to send people like me to Congress that will do that for you. You have to tell Congress that it's important that we not only spend money, but that we spend it wisely and that we set priorities. I would love to see a Swiss debt break. I think that's an innovation that has worked very well in Switzerland. I think Switzerland had a problem with spending. They spend a lot of money. They still do spend a lot of money. But the fact that they create a budget that is tied to economic output that slows down spending in good times so that in bad times you have a pot of money to spend from. So you increase spending in bad times and you save money in good times. That just makes that's just typical. I hate to use the word common sense. That might be the most overused phrase in politics, but that just makes good common sense. And then I think we've got to tackle some higher level issues like Social Security. Social Security is a train wreck. What's so disgusting to me about Social Security is that 30 years ago, we knew it was going to be a train wreck. 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And the people that ran the country back then decided to do nothing about it because they were afraid of voters and they thought it wasn't going to be politically popular. But they still knew a train wreck was coming. The problem is we're accelerating around that corner, and that corner is rapidly approaching where we're going to experience that train wreck. And every day we don't slow the train down, that train wreck's going to be worse. It's going to be a lot worse than people think it is. We're I think, years away now from blood and guts with Social Security. And by blood and guts, I mean a big fiery crash with limbs and body parts everywhere, people screaming, and it's going to be terrible. And we know it's coming, so we have to do something about it. But I think we have a government that is so ineffective at this point that they can't tackle small problems. They can't even create a budget. I don't know how in the world our government is going to take care of Social Security. But if we don't slow that train down, that train wreck, it's going to be a train wreck no matter what at this point. It's too late. We can't stop the wreck, but we can at least prevent the blood and guts and the fireball and the pain and suffering, because what we're headed towards now with Social Security is austerity measures and tax increases. And nobody's going to want that. And everybody's going to be upset about it. The simple fact of the matter is there are not going to be enough people working and paying into the Social Security program to pay for current retirees and the benefits that they're earning. When the Social Security program was created, it was a different time in this country. Populations were increasing, more people were working. The first person, and Social Security is a transfer program, the first person that received benefits in Social Security paid nothing into the system. And I hear this argument from people all the time. I paid into the system, I want to get what's coming to me. Well, I hate to break it to everyone, you paid into nothing. You gave the money, tax dollars, to pay for the people that were currently earning benefits at the time you paid the tax. You didn't pay into a savings account. It doesn't exist. The government didn't save that money. It went into the general fund and they spent it. And what they call a trust fund is literally just additional debt, which is going to lead to inflation and more debt and more taxes, period. So this thing is ugly. Nobody wants to fix it. And I think not only are people not wanting to fix it, but people aren't talking about outside of Cato Institute and a few other libertarian think tanks, nobody's talking about the train wreck and the blood and the guts that's coming. So we've got to figure out a way to fix that problem. I think that a nonpartisan commission is probably the best way to do it. But again, I don't know how we do that until we make a budget. We've got to rein in the power of the president. The executive branch has grown and power has consolidated under the executive under Congress's watch when they've been able to do something about it for over 100 years. I wouldn't say it started with FDR, but I think FDR set the example that when Congress doesn't act or when voters view Congress as being ineffective, then a president steps in. They use executive orders, emergency spending, all of these tools that they have to affect immediate action. And voters like that. I get so frustrated when I hear all this nonsense about no kings. Well, I'm sorry. Everybody likes their kings. You just don't like the current king. And you could make a great argument that the current king is abusing power in new and novel ways, but it's not anything new that presidents have abused power. It's just that sometimes presidents abuse power in the way that some people like it. And this president abuses power in a way that those people don't like it. But it's all an abuse of power. And I can name many presidents through history, George W. Bush, FDR, Obama, that have abused power, that have consolidated power in the executive. And it's what I call my hammers theory. We like to create these hammers, and we like to hand our politicians these hammers. And the presumption is they're going to use these hammers to hammer the bad guys over the head, right? The problem is when they're out of office and when the next president has the judiciary and the judicial nominations, and when the next president has the executive orders, they still have that hammer. And now they're hammering you over the head with your hammer that you created. So hammers can go both ways. I'm saying let's not create the hammer in the first place. We don't need to, and that's kind of the heart of what my campaign is all about. Is Congress can do something about all of these problems. They have a lot of authority in the Constitution to rein in the power of the president. I didn't even talk about the judiciary and how bad that's gotten. But we have the ability to do these things. We just need to start small. We need to get quick wins. I think we need to push the Overton window a little closer to liberty. When people see that we're making progress and the world didn't end and that things are actually getting better, then we can take on some of the higher level challenges. But that to me is where we would need to start. We need to make a budget, rein in the administrative state, rein in the executive. We need to write some rules around how the judiciary operates. And Congress needs to be a more important player, the way that they were envisioned by the founders and the way that the Constitution has delegated the power to them.
Alrighty, fair enough. Now earlier you mentioned about VinFast, and tell everybody what VinFast is and what happened with VinFast in regards to the North Carolina State government, for those that don't know.
So that's an interesting story. It doesn't start with the Kelo Supreme Court ruling, but I think that's the foundation of the abuse by governors and by states of that kind of corporate welfare. But basically, it's an abuse of eminent domain powers. And what happened in Kelo is the state said, Kelo was a homeowner that sued the government because the government seized her property and a number of properties in an area because the government thought it was a poor neighborhood and they were going to hand it to a drug company or some big corporation. And the way that eminent domain had previously been handled is that, if the government's going to enact a taking, that it should be for the public good. And that was generally, the public good was viewed as parks, infrastructure projects. It was even stretched to railroads and highways and things like that. But the taking of people's private property to give it to a corporation or another person because the perceived tax increases and tax revenues by the government could be put to better use than the people that were using the property at the time, that was what was at hand. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of government being able to do that, which was a horrible decision. In most states, in the wake of Kelo, enacted specific laws to prevent takings to be given to corporations, and to kind of rein takings into public good as it was previously understood to be highways, roads, railroads, infrastructure, parks, etc. So North Carolina, unfortunately, is a state that doesn't have any of those laws on the books. And North Carolina engages in a high degree of corporate welfare. So all the governors of the state since I've lived here have all played the game where you fly to these corporate meetings and you show up with a big suitcase of taxpayer dollars, and you go, hey, my suitcase is full of more taxpayer dollars than the other states, right? So give me the business, right? And that's what they do. And that's what happened with VinFast. VinFast is a Vietnamese car manufacturer of electric vehicles. Their vehicles don't have a good reputation. They don't have a lot of sales. And I'm not even sure if they've even started to build that factory yet. I'm not even sure if they're doing, it's been, I think 3 years ago now or close to it that the eminent domain was issued by the governor of North Carolina, basically seizing the property of private individuals and giving it to a Vietnamese electric car manufacturer. If that's not as distasteful gets, I don't know what is. And I think when it's a story that doesn't get a lot of attention, but I think when people hear that, it strikes the average person and the regular person as being completely wrong. And it seems wrong on its face. And a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them that's what actually happened, but it is what actually happened. The governor gambled taxpayer dollars on a Vietnamese electric car company, took people's private property, closed down churches, took people's homes, and gave it to basically rolling the dice at the casino and hoping that the tax revenues from this VinFast company brings jobs and and increase and stimulates the economy here in North Carolina. So I have never been a fan of corporate welfare, and I certainly despise eminent domain. And that's essentially what happened with VinFast, and it's happened before. And in almost every single case where the state of North Carolina has given taxpayer funds to a corporation to achieve X result, as soon as those funds dry up, the corporations close, they leave, or they never expand, or they never fully fulfill the vision of what they promised the state. Very rarely does that ever happen, and it almost never works out the way that the quote wheeler dealers in government think that it's going to work out. Now, I'm just saying we shouldn't gamble taxpayer money and seize private property from individual citizens and trample their private property rights on a gamble is even worse. I mean, it's bad enough when it's a park or a road, but gambling on some private company that has a shaky product and a shaky future at best is extremely poor judgment in my mind.
Yeah, I understand that. I actually remember hearing about VinFast like years ago when North Carolina was ranked as the #1 state for business, and Roy Cooper was flaunting VinFast. Like, oh my god, VinFast is going to be good. And as a Vietnamese American myself, I was very suspicious of VinFast from the start because I didn't know what VinFast was. I don't know this company. And why the hell, like, why are you trying to emphasize this Vietnamese thing? As a Vietnamese American, of course, it seemed very, very suspicious.
I think it's a way to go to voters and say, hey, look at this great thing I did. I brought all this, I brought these corporations in. We're growing North Carolina. We're growing business. I think the more subtle story and the correct way to go about it is, hey, look at this wonderful tax environment we created. We got rid of the individual income tax. We cut corporate taxes, and we cut the regulation and red tape around starting a small business. Those are the things, that create the environment that allows growth and prosperity, not handing large suitcases of state taxpayer money to risky corporations from overseas, or even to American corporations for that matter. The whole process to me is very distasteful. When these companies do this, they essentially bring all these governors in from different states, and the governors get down on their knees and they say, hey, please give me the business because I got a bigger stack of cash than the next guy. And there's a little bit of hyperbole in that. So I'm going to, chastise myself for going against what I like to do. And it's not engaging in hyperbole, but it's not really hyperbole. That in essence, when you boil down the activity, that's what it is. I got a bigger suitcase full of money, or a bigger bag of money that doesn't belong to me because I'm trying to get some political wins for my party, or for me to win an election. It's pretty distasteful behavior, but I don't know that to me, that's what's suspect. I think, I'm a big proponent of James Buchanan and political choice theory. And I think that politicians are incentivized to do things like that because voters reward them for it. And that's the cycle that I'm trying to break. I'm trying to call out these things and tell voters, hey, we can stop these things from happening, and we can engage in a more disciplined form of government that will still get us what we want, or will actually get us there more efficiently, or get us what we want more efficiently. And there are better ways, to approach governing.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the Swiss debt break.
So it's basically it's a way, without over complexicating it and without getting in front of my skis in the technical details about how the Swiss debt break works. It is basically spending restraint in good times so that you can spend more money in bad times. And that is the best way to boil it down. So spending it has a cap that's tied to economic output in what they believe the future economic output will be in a given time period. And so what that does is it prevents extra spending in times where the extra spending is not needed. And that's why they call it a Swiss debt break. It's a wonderful innovation. I think we could utilize that here. It's because we could, government makes a budget, they don't have to stick to it. There's nothing legally that says they have to stick to it. We had something in the Clinton administration in the Gingrich years in the 90s that was sort of similar with PAYGO. And I would even be amenable to reinstating PAYGO again, because it worked. In the last years of Clinton's presidency, we had an annual budget surplus. We were still massively in debt as a country, total debt, but we had a surplus. And I think we could bring that kind of spending discipline back to Congress. If it's not a Swiss debt break, reinstating PAYGO, or just any other kind of activity that creates some discipline around the spending of our money, because we have reached a point in this country where our debt is approximately equal to GDP. And that is scary. If we're spending 100% of our income right now, 100%, we have literally no savings, and just the cost of our debt alone, we're spending as much on interest payments as we are spending on the entire DoD. That's a massive amount of spending on just servicing, just paying for the debt. And I think the average American intuits that government just can't spend money into perpetuity without any kind of spending discipline. We should expect our government to spend money the same way we would spend money within our own household. And that would be in good times, when in times of prosperity, you save money so that in bad times you can spend more money to help. And I don't even care what that spending is. Like, I don't believe in Keynesianism. I don't believe in demand side economic activities. But at the same time, I would be happy with a win if we just said, hey, fine, do quantitative easing 17 or whatever iteration we are on that, of dumping, cash into the economy or into the banks and hoping it makes its way into the economy. But you can only spend this much. And that's really all I'm asking for, is just discipline on how much we can spend. I'm not even saying what we should spend money on, or I'm not even going the typical libertarian Republican route where we say we have to slash spending across agencies by this amount. If we could just institute some kind of spending discipline and then we can start prioritizing what we spend things on. We can't have that conversation right now because it's so politically unattractive to both Republicans and Democrats, because everybody wants to spend on what they think is important to spend on. And that's where we get into these knockdown, drag out fights where it's winner takes all and you just can't get anywhere. So just let's implement some kind of spending discipline. And then I think that enables us to figure out how we want to prioritize what we spend that money on.
Okay, fair enough. Anyways, let's next talk about kangaroo courts.
Okay. So administrative courts within the federal government. These are so you take an administrative agency, let's say SEC, for example. SEC, they investigate people they think have broken the SEC rules or laws around any given thing, and they run the court in a way that they are judge, jury, and prosecutor, and defense attorney. So it's not an Article III court. None of those things actually exist. And in a lot of cases, I don't mean to just pick on SEC, because I think most administrative agencies have some form of these courts or another. But the reason I call it a kangaroo court is because I think specifically in the example of SEC, they've got something close to 100% conviction rate. Something tells you right there that that's not you're not getting your day in court. You're going through an administrative process that's going to find you guilty one way or the other. I think even more nefariously, not to continue picking on SEC, but they're a really bad example of these kangaroo courts, is that for some people, they were slapping gag orders on them that didn't allow them to talk about their conviction or their punishment, in some cases for life. And if you went to the press and talked about it or wrote a book about it or whatever, they would slap you with additional fines and potentially imprisonment. And that's not how our judicial system is meant to operate. It's not a judicial system. Again, it's an administrative court. There's no judge. There's no jury. Everything is run by the agency itself. They are, in fact, judge, jury, and executioner. So when you get in trouble with these administrative courts, you never get your day in court. You get a sham administrative hearing that is fully designed to punish you 100% of the time. And I think we need to get rid of those. I think if any agency first of all, I don't think agencies should be writing laws. And the line between rulemaking for bureaucratic rulemaking for agencies and laws gets stretched and blurred. And if you think about why that happens, it makes intuitive sense. If you create an agency and you make me in charge of it, I'm going to widely interpret my authority and my powers. I'm going to push those boundaries out. And then somebody has to come back and slap me on the hand and say, nope, you pushed that boundary too far. We're going to dial it back in. And that routinely doesn't happen. That's Congress that's supposed to do that. And they do not do that. I would say they almost never do it. Very rarely. They depend on the Supreme Court to do that now. And that's not the function of the Supreme Court. Agencies and presidents shouldn't be pushing boundaries, and then the only check is the Supreme Court. It should be Congress checking that the advancement of that power in the laws that, the agency rules that become laws that have punishment. So my directive to all agencies and to Congress would be, and it wouldn't be my directive, it would be my goal to build consensus around this idea and write legislation that says, hey, if you're an agency that's going to issue a fine over X percentage or over X dollar figure, that has to go to an Article 3 court, period. It now leaves the agency's jurisdiction. It goes to an impartial judge and to a jury and to the Article 3 court that has the processes set up to protect citizens and protect their constitutional rights. So if you write any laws or any rules that carry prison or a fine over X number of dollars, administrative courts don't apply, period. They're gone. Basically, you do away with them. Those people have to go into the existing judicial system and be afforded their full due process and the full Fifth Amendment protections of the Bill of Rights.
All right, that's pretty good to hear. And I find it interesting, funny how you mentioned like kangaroo courts, where like earlier today, I actually found an AI president's video with a thumbnail with a title that literally called kangaroo courts. In that video, they actually based their they actually did their video based on an actual court case that actually happened in like 2016, but instead of like the real people's faces, they used like the faces of the AI presidents as an example. And in that video, there was like a lot of profanity. Apparently this case did involve like the defendant murdering someone while in prison, and that court case apparently got out of hand based on the transcript. And there were some profanities, and the defendants did make some serious claims against the judge and some of the sheriffs. So that was insane. Yeah, I haven't seen that video, but it sounds like an example of administrative overreach to for sure. Yeah, I can definitely send you the AI president's video and the transcript if you want me to after this interview is done, so that way you can get a better idea of what's going on. And I'll definitely send that link to all of you guys as well, who are watching right now, just to give you all some context as to what I'm talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyways, last up is Congress. Let's talk about the Article 1 powers.
So, for me, what I have observed, even in my own lifetime, and then when you look into it historically, you see some patterns that have developed in our government. And like I said, I don't think it started with FDR, but I think he was the first and maybe earliest, most prominent example of executive overreach. And so what I think happens when Congress is seen as indecisive or too long, overly deliberative, or whatever it might be by the voters, we tend, I think, as voters to want some pretty quick action. And so if you have a strong executive who just says, you know what, look, Congress, I'm just going to fix this problem. Here's an executive order. These aren't durable solutions. They're not lasting. As soon as the next president comes in, they can undo the executive orders and whatnot. And then what ends up happening is that the executive, overreaches, and, about 50% of the population loves what he or she did, and 50% of the population hates it. So then it goes to this Supreme Court where, there's 9 justices that have been appointed to life terms. who are essentially politicians that aren't elected, because every single one of those justices has a political ideology that they carry with them into the Supreme Court. So they are, in fact, politicians. But there's this mythology that we as voters have built up in our minds that somehow Supreme Court justices are beyond politics. Well, I see them to be politicians to the fullest. They would never get where they are if they weren't. And no president's going to select or nominate a Supreme Court justice that isn't going to be viewed as somebody that's going to go along with the president's plan or the party's plans for government. So what we have done as voters is we have empowered the president and we have empowered the Supreme Court to overextend themselves. It is my firm opinion that the process that we have now, as it actually, not what's in the Constitution, but what actually plays out on a day-to-day basis in this country right now, is Congress essentially does nothing or is slow to act. The president steps in with all these executive orders, and then it goes to the judicial system and they strike the executive orders down, and then it works its way up through the appellate process within the federal courts, and it goes to the Supreme Court. Then the Supreme Court somehow gets this amazing and awesome power to just completely overrule the will of the people, the president, and every other branch. They get the final stamp on what's constitutional and what's not. And that is at the essence of the argument that Thomas Jefferson had with Chief Justice John Marshall in Marbury versus Madison, that, okay, the Constitution says you can adjudicate court cases in line with the Constitution, but the power to overrule things and to strike down a law was never intended for the Supreme Court to have. But as voters, we somehow think this is this wonderful system. So basically, we have invalidated Congress. We have told Congress by how we vote for them, and we reward certain behaviors as voters, and we discourage other behaviors. We have discouraged Congress from being strong. We have discouraged Congress from stepping in and fighting with the president and pushing back. We have discouraged Congress from, again, in Article 3 of the Constitution, Congress is fully able to write the rules for how the court operates if they so choose. It's written right into the Constitution. It is a point of fact. Congress will never do that because in this country right now, voters have told Congress, we don't like you. We don't like you. You're slow. You take too long. You're indecisive. We want a king to rule by decree. And then there's this, supposedly mythological creature that's unbiased and is not political called the Supreme Court that has the final say. And we like that system. For everybody can complain about modern politics all they want. We like our kings. We like our Supreme Court, and we don't like Congress, and we get the government we deserve because we keep voting for the same parties over and over and over again and expecting different results. But what we fail to realize as voters, and it's a very strong belief of mine, that the institutions that we have built in this country, some other human beings didn't build these systems, these institutions. Some other alien creatures from another planet didn't create the politicians. They didn't create the government. They didn't create the problems. We did. It's our government. We vote for these people, period, hands down. We get so angry with corporations when they put red dye number 23 or whatever it is in our cereal. But we told them over and over again that we love buying these products that have red dye in it. And then we get angry and we expect JFK Jr. to come in and spank all the bad guys that we created. We created the corporations that make those products because every one of those corporations is trying to crawl inside our brains and find out what we want to eat for breakfast and what color we want it to be. And then we reward them by buying those products. We vote with our dollars. We do the same thing with politics. These politicians, I'm gonna take what George Carlin said and just absolutely mangle the quote. But George Carlin was so right. He said these politicians, they came from our schools, they're from our neighborhoods, they're our friends, they're our neighbors, they're our businessmen. They are the best we have to offer. We put them there. And if we don't start taking accountability as voters for the government that we get, then I think we ought not to complain. That's, again, a big reason why I'm running, because I'm frustrated. I realize I can't just sit back and complain. I've got to do something about it. And for me, running is a way of advancing ideas and talking and engaging with voters and hopefully changing people's mind about how massively important it is that we as voters fulfill our constitutional role as citizen-led government. That to me is so crucial. We get the government we deserve. We created these politicians. We created a strong executive. We created a judicial branch that strikes down laws, and we like it that way. And we argue about a system that we created, and yet we do very little as voters to change that system. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Alrighty, fair enough. Anyways, how's the campaign doing?
Off to a good start. You got my campaign website up. Got some, responding to a lot of surveys. I've actually been doing a lot of outreach to local businesses. I'm taking the approach I always have, and even in my past campaigns, when I go out and I knock on doors, which I've done in every campaign and I'll do again in this one, I'm just talking to average John Q voter. I don't approach them with my ideas of what I want to do to solve things, because then I'm just selling. What I really am interested in, and I mean this truly, is listening to people and engaging with them and finding out what's a problem in their life, so that if I do go to Congress, I can represent my constituents and I can represent their issues. And I can think of classical liberal and libertarian solutions that meet these people where they are in their lives and help solve problems in immediate ways that are immediately beneficial to voters in my district. And I'm trying to do the same thing with business too. I'm just reaching out to business and saying, hey, tell me about your business. Tell me what's hard. Tell me what's getting in your way. Tell me your obstacles. And through those conversations, I'm starting to find out, without going to these business owners or these business CEOs or executives and saying, hey, how's government screwing up your life? It's more about just tell me about your challenges. And then those things naturally emerge through conversation. And so I'm trying to do a lot of that right now, just getting to understand voters in my district, who's here, what their problems are, talking to business, what are your challenges? And then that informs me, and it does two things. One, it on the long shot chance that I get elected, I'm now informed and I can go accurately represent my constituency, all my constituency, not just the libertarians in my constituency or the Republicans, but the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, the unaffiliateds, the Green Party, all of my constituents. I'll have a broad understanding of what their challenges are, and I go be effective leader for them in Congress. But the second piece of it is, what I'm most interested in is testing my ideas and testing, the ideas that I want to advance as part of this election, and what's meaningful to people, what they want to hear about. And I'm not really focused on solutions. I talked a lot about solutions in this podcast, but I'm not as interested in solutions as I am in understanding the challenges and then thinking through how I can apply, rational things that we can do now in government to help solve some of these problems and break up some of the gridlock that we have inside the Beltway.
Alrighty, and feel free to tell everybody your website.
It's Matt4NC.us. That's Matt4NC.us, but it's a numeral 4. I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, and I do most of my what I would consider my important thinking on Substack. I'm not a huge fan of social media. I don't really engage with it a lot. I'm not very good at it. Don't see the value in it. I don't really get my news from social media. I get my news from probably more traditional outlets like Reuters, AP, think tanks, local newspapers. So I'm not much of a social media fan. Really seen the value in that. I don't get up in arms about whether or not some AI bot from another country is trying to change my mind on something, because I just don't consume media that way around politics or around world news. So I'm not a big user of social media, but I recognize that it's important. So I'm on those platforms. But I think for me, Substack just seemed to be the most amenable to writing a little bit longer form articles, digging into things in a little bit more detail, and really being less of a need for boiling everything down into a platitude, and really being able to say something meaningful. So my Substack, is practicalliberty.substack.com.
Okay, practicalliberty.substack.com.
Yes, that's it.
Alrighty. Okay, I got it. Alrighty. I was gonna ask if you were willing to make a YouTube channel, but I think I know the answer to that. So I guess my last question is there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, I could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I'm really trying to be concise and focused on applying rational and legitimate things that we can do as libertarians and as classical liberals to meet people where they are now in their lives. I believe that we can get ourselves at some point in the future to a much more libertarian world. And I think that would legitimately benefit all people, 100% of people in this country. Unfortunately, we're just not in a place right now where talking about the destination is as important as identifying little things we can do now to push the Overton window, to just nudge it a little bit closer to liberty. And we move that needle slowly over time. It might even be a multi-generational thing. It might be, maybe the end libertarian goal is 200 years down the road from now. I don't know. But right now, in this world that we live in, with these constraints, with these human beings, we have got to find ways as libertarians to articulate how libertarianism and classical liberalism can, from a practical standpoint, can affect positive change within our existing government and within people's lives that they're living now. And that is really my focus. I believe that there are ways that we can work together. Things like the Problem Solvers Caucus, things like forming nonpartisan commissions to tackle big problems like Social Security. There are ways we can work together, but we've got to remove people. And we've got to stop focusing on people. We've got to stop demonizing each other. We have to stop creating this, engaging in demagoguery in winner-take-all politics. It's the only way we're ever going to advance. And I'm not sure that Republicans and Democrats are in a place right now where either party can do that. You'll couple people here or there get elected, but by and large, the state of American politics in 2026 is that the stakes are high in every election. It's winner takes all. We're going to, if only we could get to a Republican majority, or if only we could get to a Democrat majority, we could just jam all the things we want to do down 49% of the country's throats. They'll live with it. That doesn't work that way. We need to create durable and lasting change that preserves freedom and liberty of 100% of the people of this country. And the only way we're going to do that is by talking about systems and not people. Systems are broken. People are not broken. We've got to create a dialogue that is focused on fixing broken systems, that takes people out of the equation by and large, takes the demonization out of the discussion, and allows us to hold hands and talk together about affecting better results on institutions. The only way forward for us as libertarians, in my opinion, and as classical liberals and as a country, is by focusing on institutional redesign. And we have to do it in small incremental ways that are palatable to the voting population this year. And I guess I would end on that. Systems are broken. People are not broken. Let's focus on fixing broken systems.
Alrighty, fair enough. With that being said, everyone, that's going to be it for this episode of the Political Freedom Fighters podcast. If you all have enjoyed, please hit the like button down below. Type in a comment for any suggestions that you may have. Hit the subscribe button below if you're new to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can all be notified for any new updates of the Political Freedom Fighters podcast. I will be linking all of Matthew's social media links in the description below so that you all can check it out for yourself. And like I said before, I'll also send you all the video about the kangaroo courts led by a YouTuber by the names of Rax's Presidents, so that you can all get an understanding of what's going on. It's literally based off the transcript of a real case. So yeah, definitely check it out if you can. And with that being said, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you all later. Take care.
James, thanks. Bye.